Yeah. Cool. Cool. Sorry about that. Oh. Why does it keep saying that? Okay, cool. So I'd like to first start off with a acknowledgement to country. I acknowledge that I am hosting this meeting from the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation from Camptown, Sydney. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all work today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this meeting. I'd like to show my respect for elders past, present, and emerging. So just a few housekeeping notes before we, just to help this online meeting run smoothly, please turn off your microphone when you are not speaking. We would love to see your faces if possible, so please feel free to switch your cameras on. The chat box will be monitored by the Neighbours team, so please feel free to ask questions there at any time. We will also have a designated Q&A time at the end, and a question prompt at the end of each section. Today's session will be recorded and a link of the recording will be made available afterwards. So our agenda for today, Magali will be going through the Accelerating Net Zero Buildings overview, and then I will be talking about our New South Wales Energy Starters offer. Then Jess will be discussing what the Energy Saver Scheme is, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. Magali, did you want to take it away with this section?
Thanks, Christine. We can just go to the next slide. Firstly, I just like to thank you all for joining us today. So just a really quick blurb from me. The New South Wales government is committed to helping New South Wales buildings transition towards net zero emissions. So the Accelerating Net Zero Buildings programme is a New South Wales government initiative to boost the transition of non-residential buildings towards net zero emissions. This programme is directly aligned with the New South Wales Net Zero Plan's ambition to grow the economy, create jobs, and reduce emissions over the next decade. There are three streams in the programme, one for embodied carbon, one that looks at energy starters, and one that looks at new buildings. So we're here today to talk specifically about the energy starter offer for New South Wales buildings. We've taken learnings from previous offers and tweaked the conditions a bit to support businesses to obtain their first energy rating and to get into the habit of regularly rating their buildings moving forward. So yeah, thanks for joining us. And if you have any questions as we go through, please put it in the chat bar or yell out, and we'll also have time at the end for questions. So I'll just hand it back to you now, Christine.
Awesome, thank you, Mags. Yes, so I'll be discussing a program that's sitting under the Accelerating Net Zero Buildings program. It is called the Energy Starters Offer. So this offer is essentially to encourage New South Wales customers to start measuring and managing their energy performance within neighbours. So this offer is only for new customers or customers who have not rated within the last 5 years with neighbours. So this offer is a financial contribution of $3,000 to new customers. And part of this offer, we require 2 consecutive neighbours energy ratings with an action plan for improvement in between the 2 ratings. I will go through the eligibility criteria in a little bit, but do ensure you meet the eligibility criteria before you apply. There will be a list of building information that will make up your application process, and just send that through to neighbours@environment.nsw.gov.au. So the offer is open now, and it closes, and it is open till 31st of March 2022, or until the funding is exhausted. So as discussed, it is only for newly rated buildings or buildings that have not been rated in the past 5 years. Buildings that fall within this category include the residential aged care and retirement living, apartment buildings, data centres, shopping centres, hotels, and offices. Offices do need to be less than 1,000 metres squared NLA, and tenancy ratings also need to be less than 1,000 metres squared NLA. Co-assessed buildings must include at least a base building and 2 tenancy ratings to be eligible. So how to apply for the Energy Starters offer. This is the list of information we require for you to submit on behalf of your customer, and just email it to our neighbour's email address and we will go from there. The Energy Starters offer is really an opportunity for your customers to get in the habit of regular ratings. So this offer does subsidise 2 ratings for your customers. It is also recommended that you sign a contract with your customers to commit to 2 consecutive neighbours rating and an action plan for improvement between those 2 ratings. So assessors will be able to invoice neighbours up to $3,000 ex GST. Once the first rating has been certified, the invoice will be paid automatically. It is on the understanding that the assessor and the building owner will commit to a second rating that following year. Failure to do so may result in the customer being ineligible for future offers. To ensure fair access, the maximum contribution to an assessor company will be capped at $21,000 excluding GST. So the offer structure. So the Energy Starter offer is really about fostering an ongoing relationship with your customers and to empower action and regular measurements through neighbours ratings even after this offer. So over here you can see a visual representation of what the offer structure looks like. Once you've had submitted an application on behalf of your customer to us, we will then assess the application, and if successful, you'll receive a confirmation email from neighbours and you'll be able to begin to lodge your first rating. You will also write up an action plan for your customers to improve on their sustainability journey and empower your customers to take action. Then you will conduct your second rating and measure for any improvements in between the first and second ratings. So we hope from the 2 subsidised ratings that this will really encourage customers to take action and just get in the habit of rating even after the offer. So there are plenty of opportunities in each sector. Down below, you can see the icons that are eligible as part of this offer, and up above, you can see the various opportunities we have in place. So, for example, we've recently launched the Residential and Aged Care Retirement Living tool about 2 months ago, and because it is a new tool, there are pretty much all the customers are new there, so it would be a great industry to target. In addition, there is also a 50% discount on the first neighbours energy and water ratings for this sector. This offer will close on 30 June 2022, and this 50% discount is available Australia-wide. There are also plenty of regional opportunities, especially shopping centres or hotels that have not been targeted much, a great place to engage new customers. There are also unrated assets in a customer's portfolio that is an opportunity to target, mid-tier and C-grade smaller buildings. And as we're coming out of lockdown, and people are starting to travel again and return back to office, occupancy is starting to go back to normal. So it's also another opportunity to re-engage the hotel and office sectors. We also have a funding mechanism scheme called the Energy Saver Scheme. And this is essentially a financial incentive where buildings can save, where financial incentives given to where you save energy above a certain standard. Jess will be going through this in a little bit. But this is also a great opportunity for buildings that use a lot of energy or are performing above standard. So I'll just pause here to see if we have any questions in the chat or any questions at the moment. No questions in chat? Okay, cool. And I'll pass it over to you, Jess, to discuss the energy savings scheme.
Cool, thanks Christine, and hey everyone, thanks for coming along. I'm going to do a little spiel about the energy saving scheme because this offer is, I guess, a great way to tack on the New South Wales energy saving scheme onto the back of it. So for those of you who have heard about the New South Wales energy saving scheme before, I apologise because you may be hearing about it again, but it's a really great opportunity. So basically the New South Wales energy saving scheme promotes energy efficiency by, I guess, when buildings or owners can prove that they've reduced their energy consumption and increased energy efficiency, they can basically earn savings from that and earn money from that. So I've given on the left-hand side of this slide a bit of an explanation of how it works, but I'm going to try and describe the diagram on the right because it's a much better explanation. So basically, you've got a business and they reduce their energy consumption. If they can prove that they reduce their energy consumption, they can generate energy saving certificates, which are basically these certificates that have a value in the market. And how they have a value in the market is that there are liable parties that are mandated to purchase and surrender these energy saving certificates under the New South Wales Energy Saving Scheme. So these are liable parties like Energy Australia, Origin Energy. They are mandated under the ESS to purchase ESCIs, energy saving certificates, and surrender them. So that's where ESCIs get their value from. So if you're a building and you can prove that you've reduced your energy consumption and you can generate ESCIs, you can sell these onto these electricity retailers and actually get profit back from that. So I might move on to the next slide, Christine. So one of the methods under the New South Wales Energy Saving Scheme is the neighbours baseline method. And this methodology, so basically if a building can prove it's performed better than a baseline rating, it can generate ESCIs or energy saving certificates. And the great thing about the neighbours baseline method is that you can generate ESCIs for any building that you can get a neighbours rating in. So you've got apartments, data centres, hospitals, hotels, offices and shopping centres. And then in January next year, so in about 2 months' time, residential aged care and retirement living will be coming onto that as well. So you can generate ESCIs in any of those sectors. And next slide. So how do you determine what your baseline is? And this is kind of where it gets really interesting and how it applies really well to this offer that we're bringing out that Christine has just gone through. So under method 1 of the neighbours baseline method, it's for new buildings that have never had a neighbours energy rating before. And obviously underneath the energy starters offer that we're launching, it's for buildings that have never had an energy rating before. So it kind of really fits hand in hand. So if your building is a high performing building and can prove that it's or it gets a star rating that's above the market average for that sector, then you can generate ESCIs for that building. So for example, in the retirement living and residential aged care sector, the average star rating for that sector is 3 stars. So if you have a high performing rack roll building and you achieve a 3.5 star or higher, you can generate ESCIs and basically get income from being a higher performing building. And where I guess it's also really beneficial is for method 2, which is for buildings that have previously had a NABERS rating. So as part of this scheme or offer that we're bringing out, the idea is that you'll be getting your first rating, and then hopefully the customer will be getting their second rating. So underneath method 2, if you have a previous rating where the building maybe got a 1-star rating and you spend a year working on that building, putting in energy efficiency actions, and you improve that star rating to say a 2, 3-star, whatever it is, and you actually make at least a half-star improvement, you can again generate ESCIs for that building and create additional income. So the New South Wales Energy Saving Scheme is a really good way for buildings and customers to generate potential, I guess, additional income for making energy saving upgrades or actions. So yeah, next slide, Christine. So to give you a bit of an idea of the potential savings, so this is specifically for method 2, we did a bit of modelling on how much money the New South Wales Energy Saving Scheme you can generate from it. So for bigger buildings like shopping centres, you can obviously generate quite a bit of money. We estimated for the average building in New South Wales, if it improves its rating from a 3-star to a 3.5, it can generate anywhere between 45 and 90K, which is like pretty amazing, I think. And for smaller buildings, you still get a pretty good return, but not as good as those bigger buildings where you're having bigger energy savings as you increase star rating. So that's kind of a general idea of how much money you can make through the energy saving scheme. And I'll go to the last slide. So I guess if this sounds like something you or your customers would be interested in, the best place to go is we have a fact sheet that you can take a look at. So I've got a link there. We've also got a case study. So Dexis, they create a lot of ESCIs through the NABERS baseline method. And we have a case study up on our website on what they do. We also did a webinar last year, a year ago today actually. And that kind of gives you an explanation of how both of the methods work in more detail, kind of gives you an explanation of how you can generate ESCIs. And I guess the main thing for you guys to know is as assessors, this is a really good value add for you and for your customers. So the first place, if you are interested in actually generating ESCIs, is to talk to an ACP or an accredited certificate provider who are basically the assessors of the ESS scheme. So we've got a link to the list there where you can find them. Alternatively, if you're really interested in the ESS, you can also look at becoming an ACP. So I put a link there as well. But yeah, if you have any questions after this webinar about the ESS, how it works, anything like that, send an email to the NABERS inbox and it'll probably get rediverted to me and I will help out and answer those questions. So yeah, that's the ESS.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. We do have more funding opportunities to come as well, yet to be announced. So please watch the space and we will let you know as soon as we find out. I will be sending a follow-up email with the terms and conditions to the Energy Starters after this meeting with a bit more detail and instructions on what you need to do moving forward. But yeah, that sums up our meeting. Did anyone have any questions?
Christine, there are a few questions in the chat.
Okay, awesome. I'll start.
So one of them, why don't I ask you the question and you can answer. So the first one that has been asked is around, can a portfolio owner who's an existing customer of NABERS apply for the Energy Starter Scheme? And we have answered that in the chat to say it is about the building itself. So if that site or asset hasn't been rated before, then that's the eligibility. It doesn't have to be a customer who's never achieved a NABERS rating before. There is a bit of a question around what the required improvement is between the two ratings, and there was just a bit of clarification on whether that was a question about the ESCs or ESCIs or for this offer. Christine, do you want to talk about that we're not requiring an actual proof of the improvement? There's not a threshold for that. It's just about working with the customer, right?
There is no requirement for a improvement or like a minimum standard, but it's just encouraged that you do implement some sustainable practice and you can see changes in your second rating, but there is no requirement. Any other questions?
There was a question in there around the forward creation of ESCs, ESCs, and Magli, you've answered that in the chat, haven't you? Method 2 forward creation is allowed for 3 years for anyone who's not checking or not following along on the chat. And I think we do have one other question in the chat around the previous rating building. We've answered that. Around the lockdowns and occupancy.
Yeah. And even after implanting improvements, how will that work? Yeah, that is fine. And it is expected that due to lockdowns, your ratings will be better. So it's fine if it does go lower. There is no requirement there as well.
Yeah, that kind of fits to that first question, doesn't it?
Yeah. How many years we can do forward creation of ESCs for neighbours method?
Yeah, so Max has answered that in the chat.
Oh yeah, okay.
Well, and there was a question around the like, is the ESS scheme or ESCI scheme just in New South Wales, which it is. There are similar programs in other states. We just happen to be, Jess has got some project stuff that has been funded by the New South Wales government, so, which is why we're kind of talking about that today, and because the Energy Starters is again a New South Wales funded project. So we're talking about those two in specific kind of tandem, because they're New South Wales funded projects that we're able to deliver to New South Wales customers. We're always keen to talk to the other states about other opportunities, and we should have linked through to some of the VIX programs and things through our website anyway.
And we are also using the New South Wales program as like a proof of concept that we can then take to other jurisdictions. But yeah, always looking for new opportunities to be able to support businesses nationally, given that Neighbours is a national program.
Yeah. And will the info distribute to attendees? Yes, it definitely will. As Christine said, we'll send a follow-up to this event with a bunch of links, a bunch of information, and I've dropped the link to our offer webpage at the top of the chat. And so that's got our pricing on it, it's got the assorted contacts, and the terms and conditions for the energy savers is on there as well. We'll also forward that to everyone, but that has the details on how to apply as well. And feel free to reach out to Christine or to myself if you've got further questions. Are there any other questions from the room that aren't in the chat?
Ethan, I can see your question there about iPod and the Neighbours ESS. I'm happy to send you an email about that. I haven't heard much, but yeah, definitely something I can discuss with you.
Awesome, thanks, Jess. Cool. Any other questions?
There's just another question in the chat around producing the evidence of the improvement action plan. We'd love to see the action plan itself, because we're nosy. We want to know what people are being recommended, and we're going to keep in contact with those grant recipient customers over the life of the grant. So we want to be able to go back to them and say, hey, you were suggested some of these things, have you done any of that? That will also help us work out if we want to do organize some community of practice with those customers around how they're getting those projects up. It's useful for us to know, but it's not a requirement to prove that those actions have been taken. That's really up to the customer. And what we're trying to do is generate that relationship, right, Christine?
Yeah, absolutely.
And for you guys to have that as assessors, to have that ongoing relationship with potentially, hopefully some new customers who aren't used to rating. I'm sure there'll be a bunch of those portfolio owners who are used to doing ratings. They know all about Neighbours, who can get additional assets rated, but hopefully we'll also be able to bring in some of those building owners who haven't done ratings before.
Thanks, Zoe. If we don't have any other questions, might just end it there. I will send a follow-up email. Oh, we have another one. Do we have any area threshold for smaller shopping centres? I don't know. We don't have any minimum area requirement.
I think it is 5,000 square meters in order to be rateable according to our rules, because we do have that kind of small shopping centre rating, which is valid for 5,000 square meters and greater GLAR. Yep, so we'd probably be looking for that similar area in line with the rules.
So that's really about the rateability of the building, that there is a rate available for that building rather than we're looking at. So we have had in previous years, as many of you guys are familiar, last year we had some offers for small shopping centres, for example. So we were trying to generate interest in smaller shopping centres, but this is just, as long as we've got a rating tool for it, we can support it, other than office, which we do have those thresholds.
Cool. Thank you. Yes, I'll send up a follow-up email with the terms and conditions and these slides to everyone. But thank you all so much for coming. I hope, super excited about the software. I hope you guys are too. Speak later. Thank you.